Right, we've hit a few minutes past, so I'm going to kick off officially. And don't worry, it's not going to be a lot of me talking today. We've got some fantastic speakers from the EAUC who are going to do all of this, and you're going to be blown away by it. I'm just here to tell you what you need to do and to do the questions at the end. So thank you very, very much for any of you that have given up your time today to attend this session delivered by the Supply Chain Sustainability School with speakers from the EAUC, and they're going to tell you way more about what they do and their work very, very shortly. So just before we get into the content and who we are and what we're doing, bit of house rules. We can't see or hear you, but we do want to know what you think. So please do introduce yourself, put some notes in the chat, and I'm sure that the speakers will be asking you questions throughout. So please put that in the Zoom chat. However, to clarify, if you have a set question that you want answered by the speakers at the end, because what we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you for about a minute, then we're going to hand over to the speakers who are going to give you all the information from today, and then we'll do questions towards the end of the session, and they'll be from you. If you have a set question that you want me to pose to the speakers, please put that in the Q&A box. So at the bottom of Zoom, it's the one with the little question mark in Q&A. So to clarify, to chat, to answer the questions that the panelists give you, to interact with us, to make sure that we're engaging, all of that in the chat. Say who you are, where you're from. That's really, really great, and we want to hear from you. But if you have a set question that you'd like posed at the end, please put that in the Q&A box. Just makes it easier for me to read through that and for me to make sure that we get those questions asked. If you are attending today and you've obviously registered with the school to do that, you will get your CPD certificate. If there's a few of you in the room and you're doing it on the big screen, email my colleague Alice. She's put her email in the chat to you, I think, directly, so that she can make sure that all of those who are there get marked as attended if they have accounts with the school. You don't want to miss out on that certificate. And don't worry, any slides, resources that I mentioned, they'll be distributed afterwards. So lots in store, but hopefully that all makes sense. So I'm going to talk to you for a minute. I just said that. I'm then going to hand over to Charlotte Bonnet and Catherine Moivers from the EAUC, who are going to talk about integrating sustainability into education. They're going to look at the why, the when, and the how. And I've seen some of their slides. It's a fantastic session. I really, really can't wait to get into that. And as I said, towards the end of the session, we're then going to have questions and answers from you. So please get them in the Q&A. So just a final welcome from me before I hand over. My name is Holly Hanson-Morn. If you follow some of the programmes on the Supply Chain Sustainability School, you may have seen me before. The Supply Chain Sustainability School delivers training free at the point of use to everybody like you on this call and wider industry. And we've done that for over 10 years, upskilling supply chains and organisations from across the built environment and wider. Today's a really important session because we're looking at that education piece. We're looking at a further than the current workforce. It's very much a focus on the future workforce. And that is a real growing priority for us at the school, a real growing priority for our college partners and university partners, as well as members across industry. So I'm really, really pleased that we're looking at that topic today. I work running that, so some of you may have seen me looking at other future workforce events or working in partnerships. So there's lots and lots of exciting work, and I would urge you, if this is your first event on the school, please do Google us, have a look, sign up. There's lots of e-learning, lots of work, lots of things you can learn from. But I don't want to talk anymore really, because I said I need to hand over to the people who are actually going to blow you away with content today and help you understand more about integrating sustainability into education. So I'd welcome Charlotte and Catherine to join me and just say in advance, thank you so much for the session you're about to deliver. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you when you need me for questions at the end.
Thanks so much, Holly. It's lovely to be joining you and the 50 other people on the call this morning. Really lovely to be working with you. I'm going to kick straight on because we have a very ambitious agenda for the next 52 minutes. And Holly's already done our introduction, so you've done the job for us, Holly. But my name's Charlotte Bonner, and I'm the CEO at EAUC, the Environmental Association for Universities and Colleges, and I'm joined by my colleague.
Hi, I'm Katrin Mobius. I'm the Sustainability in Learning and Teaching Project Officer at the AUC.
And it's great to see already we've got people joining us on the chat box to share who you are and where you come from. That's really helpful to us so that we can respond to what we know about the work that's being done across the country, but also help tailor our content and delivery, hopefully to your needs. So do keep those introductions in the chat box coming in. We'd love to see who's joining us this morning. And throughout, actually, the session, this isn't going to be one of those webinars where you can sit and listen and prepare your lunch or look at your spreadsheets, I'm afraid. We have built in a number of different interactive exercises. So we're really looking forward to not just talking at you, but engaging with you over the next 50 minutes. So what we're going to cover today, this was our brief from Holly. So we're going to look at what's the rationale for sustainability in education? Why is the education sector relevant to sustainability? And why is sustainability relevant to the education sector? And then we're going to look at the when and the how. So different ways that changes can be made to integrate sustainability into the education sector. And we've littered that throughout with case studies and examples of sustainability education in action. And we want to hopefully make sure that when we leave at 1 o'clock, we've all got new ideas for how we can contribute to sustainability education, whatever it is that our role is, given that we've got 50 people on the call who all have different roles and have different contexts and work for different institutions. I'm going to start by what's hopefully familiar territory to many of you, the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, sustainability as a word is very nebulous. It means different things to different people. And these goals are useful for further exploring what does sustainability mean? What's our interpretation of sustainability? And these goals have been around since 2015, where 193 countries that make up the UN all committed to their achievement by 2030. And one of the things that I like about the goals is that they can be applied at that international governmental level, like across the globe. These are things that collectively people are working towards. But we can also think about that at a country level. What are we doing here in the UK to contribute to these goals? Or we can think about them at a regional level. What are we doing here in Yorkshire and the Humber to contribute to these goals? We can look at them from an organisational level. We can look at them from a personal level too. And although there's a really nice Marcom's job been done to put these 17 goals in different colourful boxes, they're fundamentally interconnected and demonstrate the global nature of sustainability challenges and sustainability solutions that everyone can contribute. So work on one goal can also support work in another. For example, positive steps in goal 8, decent work, can also help alleviate number 1, no poverty. So these goals are interconnected and each goal has sub-indicators and targets which reference education. So quality education in itself is a goal, number 4, but every single other goal, when it talks about how they're going to achieve that goal, references education. So that in itself tells us a little bit about the role that education has in helping us achieve our sustainability goals, whether these are the goals we've set or whether the sustainability goals that we have as individuals, as organisations, align to these goals.
Okay, great. So after you've just gotten a little bit of an insight into the Sustainable Development Goals, I hope you can see a slide with a little activity for you to do, which is to reflect on your work last month. Can you see a link between what you did in your practice, whatever that is, whether you're from a university, students' union, a college, or an organization or a business? What have you done in the last month that reflects that relates to one or several of the Sustainable Development Goals? If you want to put that in the chat, we'd be really grateful, just to get you thinking, get us thinking, and maybe even inspire some other people who are here today with ideas of what they could possibly do, so we can learn from each other. I'll give you a little bit of time. Okay, we have goal 7, 9, 11, and 13. Great. We have someone responding. So if you want to share with everyone, just for information, there's a little option at the top of your window where you put in your writing into the chat. You can choose whether you want to just message the host and panelist or everyone. So someone just messaged saying, I responded to the government's curriculum and assessment review on behalf of the AUC, which is great, which contributes to goal 4, as well as hopefully the other goals. We have someone else, goal 7, 7, 9, and 11. 9, 11, and 12. Wow, quite a lot. 13, climate action, very good.
Feels like bingo,
yeah.
Katrin, with all the numbers. Feels just like bingo.
So many numbers. Wow. And we see that there's a lot of people who are touching on several goals, not just one goal. So this relates to something we, as Charlotte's already highlighted, that we really want to emphasize. The Sustainable Development Goals are a really great framework, but sometimes there is a little bit of danger to isolate issues, while the sustainability issues that we face today and will face in the future are not isolated, by far not. So, for example, you've just mentioned so many goals that tie together, but for example, quality education and gender equality, that ties together. If you want to achieve climate action, you need education as well, and might help to achieve equality. And if you want to have I think one of the goals is clean and affordable energy. You need people to be educated to do this and to take climate action to achieve that goal. So it's all interconnected, and we can't really separate. For which we think this graphic, which is often called the wedding cake model of the SDGs, really helps to just imagine that interconnectedness. Our economy is dependent on our people. If we don't have people who are healthy, who are educated, who are equal, then our economy struggles. And if we don't have a planet on which our people can live, then we want to have an economy for people. So that is quite crucial. Then this is really relevant because the thing is that people and businesses are more likely to focus on immediate problems as a priority over future challenges. And sustainability was famously defined by the UN as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This includes social and environmental and economic needs. Globally, we're way past that. Even in the UK, our ability to meet today's needs is already compromised. For example, look at the cost of living crisis with inflation at a 40-year high. We have labor market shortages in many sectors, supply chain issues, volatile energy prices, and unsustainability has led us to this. And people and businesses are therefore in a survival mode a lot of the time, focusing on the here and now. I'm sure many of you have experienced that as well. When today is a struggle, anything with a whiff off for the future is not a priority. Sustainability is for today. It is no longer just future generations who benefit from sustainability action. It's the present generations whose burdens could be relieved by it too. It's our own burdens that could be relieved by it too. So for businesses, this could look like resource efficiency, reduced cost, improved staff recruitment and retention and satisfaction as well, alignment with customer values, and many other things. They're all outcomes of good sustainability practice. So it's not just about the environment, it's about so many other things and how they interconnect. And we're really here today to present sustainability as a solution and something we need to act on with urgency to improve our present and future. So it's a big part of the why. And knowing that there's a lot of people here from education sectors and also wider stakeholders, what does this mean for you, for us? And it's really important that understanding the connection between people, planet, and economy is crucial to make decisions. But it's not just about knowing what the issues are that we're facing. It's not just about learning about sustainability. It's also about learning for sustainability. So to do that, we need to include head, hands, and heart, and help our learners to develop the skills as well as the attitudes and values and the knowledge to contribute to a world that's better for them, that's better for all of us. And that includes not just our formal learners in the formal curriculum, that also includes your colleagues if you're in an organization, or people you work with, your partners, your collaborators. We need to learn together, and we need to think beyond just this is the issue, and think more widely about what does that mean for learning. And where people will apply and use skills that they learn in education, the skills, the knowledge, and the values will often obviously be their job, because employment is a key aspect of education. And while education also prepares our learners for life, many qualifications and skills are geared towards being able to enter a specific job or career or sector. And green jobs often focus specifically on the environmental aspect of sustainability, but again, it's all interconnected. And as the Department for Education, Sustainability and Climate Strategy states, green jobs will not be niche. Sustainability and climate change will touch every career. That's really key. However, I think a lot of the time, we hear this at least, there's confusion on what are green jobs. And sometimes people say all jobs are green jobs, and what policymakers say and how people on the ground understand it can be very different. So what we've tried at the EAUC is to create an inclusive classification looking at different kinds of green jobs, from net zero and nature emergency jobs, which is often the very core green jobs that people think and talk about when they say green jobs. So that could be in construction, that could be in renewable energy, waste management, but also biodiversity and conservation. But then there's also other jobs, and I think that's maybe specifically relevant to people from student unions that we have here today. So there is behavior and systems change jobs that affect the systems that make sustainability action possible. And that also obviously affects businesses and organizations that are here today, because if we have the right systems in place to act sustainably, then it's much easier for us and much more likely for us to do this. There's also green enabling jobs, so jobs to make green organizations run more smoothly. This is your, say, administrators, people in HR, people in accounting, that organizations need, green organizations need to work. And then there's this phrase that so many people say, saying every job can be a green job and that you can make your job greener. So even people with what seems like no relationship to the environment at all, like think of a doctor or a nurse or a waitress, there is always some connection to the environment if we look more closely, and some carbon footprint or carbon handprint, meaning the influence that we have that we can work on. So hopefully this classification helps people to understand what people mean when they say all jobs are green jobs in some way, shape, or form. And we're seeing shifts in the labor market towards these jobs as well, an increase of green jobs specifically for net zero and nature emergency jobs and skills, but also other jobs are becoming greener. IEMA, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, has identified these 4 shifts in the labor market. First one being an expansion of skills and scope in existing specialist sustainability roles, so recycling operatives, sustainability managers. Then increased need for green skills in non-specialist roles, so a little bit the other 3 jobs that we just showed. Then there's a shift in transition of workforces from unsustainable sectors to new roles. So for example, oil rig marine engineers now maybe possibly working in renewables and things like that. Vehicle assembly technicians now having to work with EVs, electric vehicles. And then there's shift number 4, which is the demand for green skills in new green sectors and organizations. So for example, hydrogen plants and carbon capture initiatives. So we see that shifts are taking place. And Charlotte, I think in a bit, will tell you a little bit more about some ways that people have measured these green jobs. But then the big question is also, what skills do we need for these green jobs, for being green generally, for sustainability generally? And often we can think about these jobs in different ways. So we can think about specific skills, generic skills, and transformative skills, or skills for jobs, skills for life, and skills for change. That includes hard technical skills or soft social skills. And is a really big question. What are green skills and what green skills do we need? And then for those of you familiar with the concept of education for sustainable development, at the EUC, we've developed this slightly wordy diagram of how these different kinds of skills, from technical skills on the right to transferable skills and skills for a transformation, sit within education for sustainable development, which is a really big common concept, specifically in higher education and increasingly in further education as well, internationally too. So to bring it back, why we need sustainability in education, because these skills are needed, these jobs are coming, these jobs are already here, with more and more evidence and frameworks helping us to understand this. And I'll pass on to Charlotte to tell you a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Katrin. So this isn't just something that we're aware of. This is something that increasingly learners are aware of too. And you might be familiar with some work that's been undertaken over the last 15 years. It's one of the most longitudinal studies we have that helps us identify trends across our education sector, particularly the post-16 education sector. And that's work that's been done by Students Organising for Sustainability to record students' experiences and perceptions of sustainability in their education, as well as their anticipated kind of engagement with sustainability. And what the graph in front of you shows is the kind of things that learners are looking for from their future roles. And this is over the last 5 years of the study. So the field work for this year has been done, but the report isn't out yet. And it shows you things that you would expect. Like when people are looking for a job, they want to know how much money they're going to earn. Of course they do. But it also shows us that learners are looking for a chance to work in a business or organisation that makes a difference to social and environmental issues, in a role that helps develop their local communities, in a role that helps contribute to the environment. And so these are things at a jobs level learners are looking for. There's similar data that sits alongside this that shows that learners are looking for this in terms of what they study as well. So if your role is for an institution that perhaps relies upon student recruitment, this is also something that is affecting students' choices in terms of where they study, as well as what they study, as well as influencing the kind of roles that they want to have in future. So Katrin showed you some data from IEMA and Deloitte that looked at those 4 shifts across the labour market. This looks at the kind of thing that students and learners are looking for from their roles. You could extrapolate that to the wider workforce. You may be comfortable doing so, you may not be. There's lots of other data available to you that looks at this regionally. So on your screen here, we've got a screenshot from a resource produced by PwC, one of the big 4 consultants, and it's called the Green Jobs Barometer. And this shows shifts in data over time. So I think they've published 3 years worth of data so far. And across the regions of the UK, it helps us see what does this look like in our area. Now, I'm based in the Yorkshire and the Humber, so very selfishly, that's the one I've chosen for the screen. But it shows us what kind of green jobs are being created, what kind of benefits are we seeing from those green jobs. What are the sunset jobs in this area? Now, I personally hate that phrase because I think it sounds really romantic. A sunset job. This is not romantic. This is about those jobs that are going to become more likely to become obsolete as we move to a sustainable future. And that piece that Katrin mentioned about that shift and helping support transitions from sunset jobs into jobs is really critical. That's sometimes called the just transition. And we know what this looks like when it's done badly, right? Across the UK, we still have communities that are economically disadvantaged because of poor transitions in energy infrastructure, for example, when we moved from coal to North Sea gas. So this is really critical for kind of that social justice, those social elements of sustainability, as well as what this is looking like in the workplace. Like what kind of carbon intensity do employers in each region have? What kind of percentage of workplaces have strong and stringent sustainability goals in their place? So I'm going to share with you in the chat box a URL to the PwC Green Jobs Barometer. And I'm going to ask you to just take a look at your area, wherever you are based. What kind of trends can you see? What kind of things are you finding surprising about that? What information is new? Does that correlate with what you know about your local region? And you'll have to just forgive me for 2 moments whilst I faff around with hyperlinks to actually enable you to do that.
Oh, sorry, I just put it in the chat, Charlotte.
Oh, well done, Katrin. You're one ahead of me. Excellent. So we're just going to give you a couple of minutes to go click on that hyperlink, find your region and have a little look at the data that you can find. And if you're comfortable, if you're willing, would love to see some of your reflections on that data in the chat box. Like, what do you think of this? What does this mean for you and your role in your region? Over to you. I always feel like we should play some lift music when we're asking people to do things, but I've been well trained over the years to be quiet when we've asked people to do things. It avoids people having to try and multitask. So thank you so much for those of you that have put some comments in. There's some really interesting reflections there. So Rebecca, you've said that in Northern Ireland, the carbon intensity of employment is higher than you would expect. That's really interesting. So employers are struggling perhaps to make those reductions in their carbon emissions. They probably have net zero targets, but maybe they're not there achieving them yet. So what does that look like in terms of how that can impact employer and education partnerships around sustainability? Rachel, you've said that the Northeast is below average on all accounts. In some cases, that's good, right? In terms of carbon intensity, that's great. In terms of green jobs creation, perhaps less good. So just thinking about that you know, where you sit on a national level, it's really interesting. Thank you for sharing your reflections there. Holly, you've done the same as me, and I know you're Yorkshire based as well, so you've had a look at the difference between Yorkshire and London. A lot fewer jobs here set to disappear into the sunset, but there's less opportunities of more, so like in the South East. So you can start to see, we talk about these trends in sustainability, the kind of tools that we're sharing with you help you think about that from a really place-based perspective. So whether you're from an employer, whether you're from an industrial partner of the Sustainability Supply Chain School, then this could impact what you prioritise. If you're an educator, it could impact the kind of conversations you're having with employers, so that the work that you do is relevant to your context, to your communities, and to your learners. So really good to see some of those reflections in the chat box. We continue to welcome them, particularly when, you know, I've just seen there that people are really pleased to see some of the findings from that tool. So to kind of summarize what we've covered in the last few slides, sustainability really isn't about just the environment. And of course, as Catherine so eloquently talked about, our biosphere is absolutely critical to having prosperous and healthy communities. But so much of our sustainability work really impacts people's lives. And there's some examples of this on the screen now. So one of the reasons I love working in education is just the sheer reach of it. Now, in post-16 education alone across the UK, there are about 7 million learners. And I think that's really, it demonstrates the potential kind of transformative nature of sustainability education. If we do a good job, if we're equipping those 7 million learners on a 1, 2, 3 year cycle with the head, heart and hand skills that Catherine talked about, so that they're able to positively contribute to sustainability in their lives and in their work, we're going to be in a much better place, right, in terms of our response to the urgency of the environmental and societal challenges we face. We'll have the right skill set to lean into those technical solutions to some of those sustainability challenges, because we'll have the workforce that we need in green jobs. We'll have managed that transition well, so that we're not leaving anybody behind in terms of our transitions to more sustainable economies, more sustainable technologies. That just transition piece is really important. And the reason I think education is so critical for that is because post-16 education reaches every town and every city and every community in the country. So we have a really critical role to play in those transitions. There's a huge amount of overlap between much of the work that's going on in EDI and social justice and environmental sustainability. And I think we have a real opportunity to enhance inclusion, equity, representation in areas that have been, you know, historically underrepresented, underserved, marginalised by this work, by the work of our societies through our sustainability work. Right? We have an opportunity to, it's a terrible analogy, isn't it? But to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. We also have the fact that many post-16 education institutions really shape their communities, you know, are big players, sometimes called anchor institutions within their towns and cities. So they can work with local partners like local authorities, like NHS trusts, like employers, to really shape communities for the better, not just in terms of the priorities, but in terms of like the actual infrastructure of those communities. I was in a call earlier on today where we were talking about the way that institutions have partnered with other local organisations to enhance the active transport links to their local city, for example. And then finally, there's a piece around research and innovation, right? So within our education institutions, we home much of the research and innovation that helps us develop new knowledge, new technological solutions, which will only enhance our work in this area. So this isn't just about the bins and the light bulbs, right? In terms of the contribution that our education sector has to play. This is really transformative stuff for people, for community, for society more broadly. And so to summarise what we've talked about so far, society is for today. I think we've offered society is for today. Sorry, sustainability is for today. We've talked a lot about how historically perhaps this has been about something that's going to happen in future. Climate change is going to be happening in future. Sustainability is about meeting future needs. Well, these issues are here, they're stark, they're urgent. Sustainability is just as much for today as it is for the future. And what we're really talking about in many cases is being future-proof, is being resilient to future changes, is being prepared for what's to come. And it's about having purpose in our work that's beyond the continuation of the status quo, but that gives us purpose to protect and nourish and enable real flourish in our environment, in our biosphere, in our societal structures, and in our economies too. And then finally, I think this is something we haven't talked a lot about yet, but we will do now as we continue with the session, is about collaboration and partnership and how that's absolutely critical. And the BDIs amongst you might have noticed that one of the Sustainable Development Goals is in itself about partnership. It's about fostering collaboration, because no one entity, organisation or person can do this work, right? It has to be done as part of an ecosystem. So we're going to talk a little bit now about what that collaboration looks like within organisations and beyond. and organisations. So it's back over to you, Catherine.
Great. Yes, so it's really great to see that we have so many different people here today, just from so many different organizations and across different levels of these. And what we really wanted to talk about is for the how of sustainability in education. Whole organization approaches are really a key enabler of achieving this. So thinking about 4 C's, quite easy to remember. I also love some letters or some collection of things that are easy to remember. So 4 C's, which is culture, community, curriculum, and campus. Obviously recognizing that not all of you here have a formal curriculum or a formal campus. But for example, the curriculum really is about learning. So in one of the businesses that's here today, that could be what CPD you're undertaking, but it also is about informal learning. So what do people learn as part of being part of the organization? And that's exactly where curriculum or the learning aspect intersects with campus or the premise and culture and the community. So making the example of students on campus, if you enter a campus and it looks a certain way, or you can do certain things, some things are easier for you than others. Maybe there's a lot of trees, maybe there's a little house for a hedgehog or an insect hotel calling out for biodiversity. We learn a lot through that like hidden or subliminal curriculum on what is it in the environment that we are surrounded by, and how does that influence how we see things and how we act. And that then intersects as well with community, which in colleges and universities often are the local communities they're embedded in, but it goes wider as well. It includes employers, it includes partners. It really is about connecting what we're doing and what we're learning to the stakeholders around us, and really making the things that we talk about and that we learn about and that we do real world issues, and building effective pipelines to work for providing social value to local communities as well. And then culture also weaves through all of these aspects. So it really is about supporting the people working for you, working with you, learning from you, learning with you, and the other stakeholders as part of your community, as part of your campus, to understand that there is a collective responsibility in promoting sustainability and taking climate action. So that could, for example, also be a part of your leadership and your strategy. How does that enable your organization or your institution to take action on holistic sustainability, which includes social, environmental, and economic aspects? So these approaches typically are very impactful. I'm just losing the chat as soon as I share, so I'll just open that. And there's a really good paper from a really good academic paper. Normally not a big fan of sharing these without summarizing them, but there's a really good paper on whole institution approaches for G and FE that I really recommend reading if that's something you want to explore more. But for now, for a quick brainstorm, what we wanted to do is to think with you on the 4 areas of curriculum or learning environments, campus or premises, community, and culture, and what activity is already taking place in your organization that relates to sustainability. And are you aware of any specific projects or focuses that relate to sustainability? And maybe sit in the middle of this Venn diagram, maybe sit in one of the circles, maybe sit in 2 or 3 of the circles. We'd love to hear from you in the chat where your institution or organization is at with these kind of approaches and what examples you can maybe think of. Can't see anything yet in the chat. Maybe people are still thinking. Oh, great. Lots of work is being done around culture and curriculum currently. Rachel, can you remind us where you're from? We have a green room that works on sustainability. That sounds exciting. Archaeology. Okay, Wessex archaeology. Oh, great. So when you talk about culture, are you thinking leadership, or what kind of aspects are you thinking about? Training about environment and health, which is part of the curriculum, but will also influence your culture, probably, hopefully. Holly just saying, those with hands up, please put your answers in the chat. Can't unmute you, that's part of the webinar setup, unfortunately. So anything you want to say, just put it in the chat and we'll best to have a look at it. Culture, leadership, training and mission, yes, can be a really big driver. If strategies and missions include sustainability, that can help to support bottom-up action and drive bottom-up action from people working across the organization as well. A lot of staff working for the Open University are home-based, still have very large campus that we're looking at. Home with Sustain It, okay. Oh yeah, okay, well, workspaces are empty. Yeah, what do you do with it now? That's a really good question. What does that communicate, what you do with it now to other people potentially going there? Culture, construction, material reuse, building a culture of reuse, that's great. Some training. Huge projects in communities, great, working with them, listening to them. It's a really big aspect, absolutely. And that's part of culture as well, you know, how you interact with communities and how you let their voice influence what you're doing. That's a part of culture. Education in early years, including sustainability points and lessons throughout the year. It's great. Great. Developing a foundation module on sustainability for students and staff. Also great. Again, part of culture, curriculum, and community. How? Yes, that's a good point. How do we do this? And hopefully some of these examples that we've discussed in the chat help to inspire you on how you can do this, because every organization, institution is unique and there is no one perfect approach. There is some pointers that we can use to design these approaches, but there is no here one size fits all thing. So yeah, I think that's me passing back to Charlotte.
Thanks, Katrin. And some of the how is exactly what we're going to come on to next. Now, we've obviously, as EAUC, the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges, are looking at this particularly from an education provider perspective. We recognise that there's lots of people on the call today who don't work for an education provider, who work in different parts of society. And I think a lot of this is transferable, so bear with us. And we will talk a little bit more about educator and employer partnerships in a few slides' time. But what I think some of the examples that you've given demonstrate is that to take a whole organisation approach, you need to be thinking about your whole set of stakeholders, your whole organisation community. This isn't a role that somebody that wears the sustainability badge, whether they're a sustainability manager or part of a sustainability team, can do. If we're really going to mobilise our whole organisation, we need to mobilise our whole community too. And that means everybody. And what people can contribute will be different depending on their role, right? The contribution of an educator, a lecturer, a teacher will be very different to the contribution that a catering manager can make, for example. But there is a contribution there to be made. And so understanding the core concepts of sustainability, then understanding what contribution you can make and having the skills to do so is a really important part of developing that culture of action across an institution. And what I'm going to share with you now is a couple of tools that are available to you to help develop that whole organisation approach. Now, some of them are, as I said, intended for certain segments. Some of them are FE focused tools. There's plenty out there, lots of it's transferable, and we'll share our contact details at the end. So if you're looking for something specific that we haven't shared, we'll do our best to help navigate for you and signpost you to something that's useful for you and your context. So the first resource I'm going to share with you is the Climate Action Roadmap for Colleges. This is a brand new publication that was revised this month. Gosh, only this month. I was about to say last month, but no, this month, after having been in existence in its previous iteration for the last 3 years. And what the Climate Action Roadmap for Colleges is it demonstrates what does a whole organisation approach look like across 5 different themes: leadership and governance, teaching, learning and research, partnerships and engagement, estates and operations, and data collection. And it shows what sustainability practice looks like at different levels of maturity. If you're an organisation and you're just starting out, it shows you what it looks like when you're just emerging in your sustainability practice, all the way through to leading and pioneering work across those themes. And it also gives indications of resources required in terms of time and money. What are you going to have to invest to get the job done? And that can help inform people's prioritisation as well as their long-term planning for sustainability action. So from a whole organisational design perspective, it's a really good place to start to assess where are you currently at, where could you be, and how are you going to get there. For those of you that are educators that are on the call, or those of you that work with educators, another resource we want to showcase is the Fusion Skills Education for Sustainable Development Toolkit. And this looks at the development of those hands, heart and mind skills that Katrin mentioned in the introductory section earlier on today, and equips teachers and tutors and trainers and lecturers and educators, but also curriculum leads and managers, careers advisors, for example, with practical steps they can take to embed sustainable development in their teaching and learning practice. So whether that's example activities they can undertake, whether that's how to embed this within their review cycle, whether it's how to make sure that the sustainability content in their course is relevant to their subject discipline, there's a whole wealth of resources available through that toolkit. And it's a static PDF. You can do this in your own time, you can do it alone or with others. Another tool that we really recommend at EAUC is the development of living laboratories. And this is one way that can really be amplified and improved through educator and employer partnerships. And the concept here is that quite often learners are learning through theoretical work, whereas we know that they develop their sustainability skills far greater level if they are working with real life examples. And many of those real life examples can come from within their education institution. So let's say the HR department of a college is about to renew their policies to make sure that EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion, is really strong in that policy portfolio. The business department could use that as an example for their students to really research what do great practices look like from an EDI perspective within HR policies. What recommendations would the students make to their college to make sure that that is fit for purpose for their community in line with best practice? So you see that there's that then partnering between stakeholders, the HR team, and the business development department to provide rich and real-world learning opportunities for learners, whilst also solving problems, whilst also developing data and understanding. And what's great about Living Labs is that they don't always demand additional capital investment either. This is about building relationships and partnerships. And I gave an example there from within an institution, so the HR team and the business department, but there's no reason why Living Lab methodologies can't be created with local communities, with businesses, with charities who have real life problems, real life solutions that they want to engage learners in to help develop their education whilst also meeting their own societal needs. And that's just one example of an educator-employer partnership. There are so many ways that through developing good collaborations between colleges, universities, adult education providers, training providers, and other employers that can enhance both the employer's work around sustainability and the educational experience of learners and those that work within that education provider. So some of that might be about workplace experiences and offering work experience to students. It might be that you start to recruit apprentices or interns in partnership with a local education institution. It could be about staff CPD, continued professional development, and employers providing opportunities for staff to come and look at What does work in that industry look like in 2024? What kind of kit and technologies are used? What kind of priorities are being made by that industry so that what's then taught in the classroom is up to date and relevant? It could be about fostering opportunities for employers to participate in lectures as guest lecturers, offer project ideas like in a living lab, or attend things like careers fair to showcase what sustainability looks like in your organisation, in your industry. You could go one step further and think about what's your role in shaping the curriculum. And there are lots of opportunities for employers to shape what curriculum looks like, either within individual institutions, but also at a national level. So it might be that you sit on a trailblazer group for the Institute for Apprentices in Technical Education, helping shape what knowledge, skills and behaviours that somebody that works in archaeology, what do they need? And trailblazer groups do exactly that. They use employer inputs to shape what do learners need to develop in terms of their knowledge, skills and behaviours, and that then translates into qualification specifications and what's taught in a classroom. Or it could be that it's through your social value activity. As an employer, you might have commitments to providing social value to your local community or to your region. And there's lots of ways that by partnering with education institutions, you can deliver on that, whether that's through, helping develop a new wildflower meadow if you're a construction firm, through to helping share your expertise with an organisation to help them develop their practice. So there's all sorts of different ways that education employer partnerships can enhance sustainability work. And I've got a couple of real life examples on the screen here for you. So in the top left, we've got Sparsholt College. Their whole college's model of delivery is based around developing students who are trained to meet the needs of the workplace. And as such, their partnerships with employers ensure that learners through their course of study get insight visits, have guest lectures, have work placements, and that they're practicing through their education the vocational skills that are needed by local employers. They also have developed partnerships which help provide access to green technologies. So employers can access those green technologies to provide them a test bed so that they can develop market confidence in new products that they're testing, and vice versa. So employers provide the college with technology and kit that students can then get exposure to so that they're developing kind of the relevant workplace skills that are needed. UE, the next one along, this top right, lots of people on a stage together. That's the University of the West of England. They developed a project which provides access to jobs, training and business opportunities, particularly to racialised young people in Bristol and the local area, to address inequalities that are visible in the sustainability sector, so reducing or enhancing representation of different historically underrepresented groups. And one of the ways that they've done that is by building into that project business partners from the community, making learning relatable and equitable, but also building those connections between learners and local employers to help that pipeline into work. Ooh. Down in the bottom left there, we've got South Devon College, who recently were recognised as the Sustainability Institute of the Year in the Green Gown Awards. And as well as developing partnerships with employers to support learning, they also offer free and funded CPD courses to local businesses, so helping support the skill set of people that work in local businesses. There's a number of other examples on the screen, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over them, but we'll include in the follow-up from today's session lots of links where you can find out more about what educator and employer partnerships look like in reality. And I'll also share a link to the Climate Ambassadors programme, which is a relatively new project funded by the Department for Education, which fundamentally provides staff and students with practical experiences of supporting other education institutions to develop climate action plans. So a really good way to enhance an employee volunteering offer, to grow networks in education sustainability, as well as to enhance that social value piece. So now we've got a couple more links to share with you at the very end, but I don't know whether we've had any questions come in, Holly. If we have, now's the time.
I don't think people have had a chance to ask them yet, Charlotte. So I was thinking whether we could get questions sent in and answered afterwards, if that's all right. And then you'll have time to use these few minutes to wrap up instead. What do you think?
I mean, there's been lots of things coming into the chat box, but no questions, as you say. I'm really happy for people to ask them in these final few minutes. We'll share contact details, and of course they have your contact details too, so always happy to follow up after the session. But of course, people, you can also speak now if you would like us to answer anything in these final few moments. And perhaps whilst people are typing, if there are questions, Catherine, you can talk through a couple more resources that are available to people.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're an organization working mostly with universities and colleges. So generally our resources are geared towards them. But as we discovered and discussed today, nothing is isolated, everything's interconnected, and so are institutions and businesses and employers. So hopefully these resources will be useful to establish those relationships. So some things to share is our Education for Sustainable Development network. We have all university and colleges who are members can become part of this, and many universities and colleges across the UK are member of the AUC. It's free for you to join this network. Then we also have 2 free guides around green jobs, one for students and one for staff in colleges and universities. And we have a Sustainability Champions Learning Pack. The links to these resources we can share via email. We also often get asked around, how do we integrate sustainability specifically in subjects? It's all nice to have this big framework, but what does this mean for my specific subject area? And we've worked to produce some resources and inputs on how we can do that, for example, through a Realigning Curricula for the Future series, and specifically for FE providers, the Education and Training Foundation has produced a whole list of how sustainability can be integrated in different subject areas. We also have our Green Gown Awards that Charlotte just talked about, a project won an International Green Gown Award recently, where we showcase really strong sustainability approaches across the further and higher education sector. And I'll just
Great. So there's been a couple of questions in the Q&A that I'm answering. There's one that I can't answer, Rachel, because I just don't know enough about what you're intending. So we will follow up with you on that, because I'd love to find out more about what your intentions are by creating a supplier buyer educator cycle to create ongoing interconnection. So I'm sorry, I don't quite know enough to be able to give you some meaningful responses, but we'll follow up with you after the call. Again, given the diversity of who we've got, there's lots of next steps that you could take. Some of these will be really appropriate and relevant to you, some of them less so. You might have your own next steps that aren't on the screen in front of you, but we've got a few suggestions for you, given what we've shared over the last 50 minutes. And we'd love to hear your feedback from today's session. There's a link in the chat box for that. But fundamentally, we deliver these sessions to help enhance people's knowledge about the relevance of sustainability to education and vice versa, but also to equip you with tools and resources to help you take next steps. So here's some guidance from us. We'd love to hear from you if actually what you need to take your next steps is something different. And we've said throughout the last few minutes that we'd love to hear from you and happy to follow up after the call. So on the next slide, there's some contact details to enable you to do that. So do please get in touch. Holly, I don't know whether there's other things that you want us to finish on, but for now, that's it from us. We've been really enjoying your contributions to the chat box. Thank you for those, and have a good rest of your Thursday.
Thank you. I just coming in to say thank you so much, Charlotte, Catherine. That was absolutely incredible. You can see everybody's really enjoyed it. And yes, to everybody here, you're going to get a follow-up with slides, with links, as everything as stated, and contact details. So if you have any further questions, you can follow that up. Yeah, thank you everybody for giving up their lunch hour, and thank you very much, Charlotte, Catherine, for doing it for us.